When I first heard about the show Still 17, I was more than a little put off by the premise. It was described to be a show about a girl who was in an accident when she was 17 and fell into a coma, and didn't wake up until 13 years later. Even though she was now 30, she, of course, was still mentally 17 years old. Apparently, after she woke up, she would bump into a 30-year-old man, and a romance would happen between them. This premise was problematic to me because, despite the woman now being 30, she would, in her head, be a 17-year-old. And that would basically mean that a 30-year-old man would form a romantic relationship with a 17-year-old, which is...
It's gross. I should be thoroughly repulsed.
Yeah. I decided to go ahead and give it a shot though because Shin Hae-sun was playing the female lead, and I really liked her performances in the smaller roles in some of my favorite shows. So I gave it a shot, and it started out more or less how I imagined it would.
아, 수미. 이름이 도수미였구나.
Gong Woo-jin, the main male character, is kind of creepy in a stalker type way. Like, it's not terrible, but it is kind of weird. If a guy you'd never met before came up to you to give you a painting he did of you, it'd be more than a little weird. And the setup of him accidentally snagging that chime off her bag and knowing it was hers and chasing down the bus to give it back to her was just, you know, a bit contrived. Actually, a lot contrived, and it's kind of hard to watch. Also, the realization that these characters are actually 17 in Korean years, so they're actually 15, which is, you know, worse. But if you can make it through all of that, you'll wind up with the female protagonist who is strangely compelling for a K-drama. In fact, I'd say Usori is easily much more interesting than any of the other characters, even the male lead, which is saying a lot considering how often female leads are so dull and boring and get tossed to the sidelines in favor of the male leads in K-dramas, even whenever the show was literally named after them. This isn't to say she's the only compelling or likable character in the show, far from it, and all the core characters, with one exception who simply hasn't been properly introduced yet, are very likable, and the show so far has approached its subject matter with respect and clear drive for depicting some of the things the characters go through with a weight and realism you don't often see in K-dramas.
저기... 쳐다보는... 저 아줌마 누구세요?
Oh, and I can apparently only see in narrow rectangles and speak in cliché. Also, why am I in a hospital? Where's my family? What's going on? But first, who was the woman next to me? Yeah, this show still has some pretty clear cracks in the believability level, so don't expect too much on that. Just know that it is better than most. Except for that nurse who lies to her about her family. That goes right up there next to the keychain scene and how unrealistic it is because, seriously, she's a nurse. Telling hard truths can't be this impossible for her, or she really needs another profession. The show tends to lean into being extremely quirky, and that is a bit grating at first. What with Gong Woo-jin's social skills, and that thing he puts on his head. Seriously, what is this? And Yu Chan's introduction is kind of meh. Oh my gosh, I forgive it! No, seriously, this is ridiculous. Oh my gosh, never mind. I don't care. Although on a serious note, Gong Woo-jin's measuring thing is a bit ridiculous and annoying. The explanation that he makes miniatures is kind of okay, and I can go along with it, but the jokes about that high school girl thinking he was measuring her legs are not really great. Because if there was any merit to her assumption, that would be incredibly creepy and scary that a grown, strange man would want to measure her legs and would just go up to her and start doing it without saying anything. It's not funny. It's not. Especially since this seems to be a common occurrence.
나 무대 디자이너다. 모형 만드느라 모든 치수 재는 게 습관이다. 오해했다면 미안하다. 넌 말을 해야지. 그 와중에 넌 또 그걸 재고 앉았니? 아니 줄 다 빼들 때마다 변태로 오해받고도 억울하지도 않냐?
And he never bothers to explain himself despite this being something that could easily terrify girls, and already clearly has. But, you know, joke. Whatever. Aside from the measuring thing, some of the quirky actually really works.
Please call me Jennifer.
The maid, who could easily have been one of the worst parts of the show, is, so far, my absolute favorite. And even Usori being so quirky actually works here. I have a knee-jerk recoil reaction to female characters like her because they are so often simply a manic pixie dream girl, a trope I am definitely not a fan of. But with Usori, it helps to really create this sense of whimsy and naive that Shin Hye-sun brings so well into her performance. Despite the fact that she is a nearly 30-year-old woman, the way she acts and speaks constantly reminds the viewer that this character is mentally a teenager, and it pulls it off in a way that isn't grating or exaggerated, and remains faithful to the character that was set up before the coma. I mean, it also helps that the actress looks like she could be a teenager or is only like 21, 22. I mean, you know. I also really liked that, despite the show obviously gearing towards a romance between Usori and Gang Woo-jin, she initially forms a bond with Yu Chan, who being 17, like actually 17, 19 in Korean age, is much closer to Usori mentally, and who also has a similar energy to her. They form a bond, and I'm really excited to see it grow. In fact, I'm really excited to see where the show overall goes after this. Despite its flaws, the show and characters so far have been really engaging, and I'm eager to learn more about the characters, watch them interact, and find out what happened to Usori's aunt and uncle. While the 40 half-hour episode runtime still leaves plenty of room for my earlier fears and whole new ones to be realized, I have a lot more confidence in the show to handle itself well. Especially since I've realized the screenwriter for the show is Jo Sung-hee, who wrote the script for High School King of Savvy, which I loved, and She Was Pretty, which I adored and I have rewatched more times than I can count. All in all, I am incredibly optimistic about this show, and even if it's not that great, finding out who the screenwriter was really put in perspective for me what a bad show really looks like. Because, honestly, this show could not possibly be worse than the abomination that is the Chinese adaptation of She Was Pretty. Actually, he doesn't bother me. I mean, in terms of portrayal, he's no Siwon, but at least the creators didn't destroy every fundamental element that made this character work in the Korean version. So yeah, he gets a pass from me. But seriously, fuck this show.